Hi everyone, my name's Lance Nichols from www.zenithleantraining.com. Today I'm going to talk to you about how to conduct successful Lean Six Sigma improvement programs. So to be successful in Lean Six Sigma improvement methodologies, we have to look at 4 areas. We'll look at the pitfalls, success factors, and failure modes. These are the myths surrounding Lean Six Sigma. We're going to be talking about the mindset behind Lean or Lean Six Sigma. Also, why Lean Six Sigma fails most of the time. And finally, how to run successful programs. Okay, so first of all, myths. Most people believe that it's a Japanese methodology. It isn't. Lean especially is a culmination of tools and techniques that have been developed over decades. A lot of people believe it's too technical. It isn't. In the first stages, the first 1, 2, 3 years of a Lean implementation, we're actually using basic techniques and tools. The Six Sigma side, it can be analytical, but even so, with the software that we have today, it's not too difficult to do, and anybody can learn it. A lot of people believe it's too difficult to change. It isn't. The Lean methodology and the Six Sigma methodology utilize psychological tools and techniques to deliver successful projects. The mindset behind Lean then. We need to look at this as a cultural change. You can't do projects in isolation and expect everybody to change. Everybody needs to be involved. If I were to give you an analogy, let's say we had 2 cupboards, you had a Lean person in one and a Six Sigma person in another. To deal with specific business issues, we can pull out the Lean Six Sigma black belt or the green belt and say, right, we've got a problem, can we deal with this? So that person may go away for 6 to 9, 12 months, form a part-time team and deliver an end result. Lean, however, it's a slightly different methodology. Lean is to be conducted on a daily basis. Small improvements, day by everybody, and you get this culmination of an improvement program. We need to look at Lean and Six Sigma as a problem-solving methodology. Okay, so what I mean by that is, it's no good saying to people, right, I think we've got a problem there, can you deal with it? Okay, without knowing the actual boundaries, without knowing the costs, without knowing the strategic direction, then how can we do this? So we always look at a problem. It's for problem solving. And it should be cost neutral. Now, most of the time, anybody can say, right, to make that improvement, we should get a robot, we could do this, we can get this technology, we can do this or the other. But in fact, that's not true. Lean and Lean Six Sigma shouldn't cost anything. And we'll explain how we do that later on. Thirdly, why Lean Six Sigma fails most of the time. Academic studies have been carried out and it's been said that 80 to 95% of Lean implementations and projects fail, especially the Lean elements, because remember, I did say it was cultural. It's difficult to change culture, or is it? So, most of the time, they can fail for these reasons. Leadership team has not bought in. When I go around companies and I train teams, especially continuous improvement teams, I mean, I did one recently where I did a black belt course for 6 people within a continuous improvement team. Now, they couldn't answer the simple question, has your leader, the boss, the CEO, the managing director, has he bought into this? Does he know anything about Lean? And what you find is, when you have the experience of going into companies and doing the training, etc., what you'll find is that the leaders have identified a gap in their organization. So, for example, they might say, or company XYZ are doing this, I think we should do it. Or they might look at their competitors and say, they've got a continuous improvement team. They do lean manufacturing. They do lean for service or the lean enterprise. We should do that. So they recruit 5 or 6 people to do the change elements for them. But that's wrong, because you can't delegate change to subordinates, middle managers, and even directors. It has to come from the top. Poor commitment. Even if he or she has bought into this, so for example, they may have come from another organisation who's done it very successfully. They may have done the training, they may understand the methodology, and they may think, right, this is common sense, let's do this. Okay, we want to be excellent in our business. So they delegate improvement down through the organisation. But you'll always get situations where you have poor commitment from middle managers and frontline staff. Although the leader has bought in, this needs to be driven right the way through the organisation. But ultimately, it's about human development. Okay, we want to improve the organisation in a way that we improve people's lives. Poorly trained people. Many times we go into organisations and you have green belts or Lean Six Sigma black belts, and they're given a role to drive improvement through. But what you find is when you go around businesses and you speak to consultants, you go through networks, etc. So for example, I had a meeting at a major bank about 3 months ago. It's in the top 5 banks in the world. So the person I was meeting was actually an interim consultant. Now, I didn't know this at the time. And as we were talking, what I realised was then, again, after all my experience, was that this was a person who didn't really understand Lean, especially. So, for example, when I talked about policy deployment, he didn't understand it. Now, policy deployment is a strategic tool. Okay, there is actually a methodology for this. So, not everybody knows the full Lean structure or the full Lean Six Sigma structure. Lean Six Sigma is a hybrid approach, and this may be controversial, but it is a hybrid approach. Okay, it's a Lean Six Sigma methodology using the make, define, measure, analyze, improve, and control, and it utilizes lean improvement tools. So especially in the improve phase, we have lean techniques. But lean is more than just about improvements. Like I said, it's a cultural methodology. Another part of this is that people don't follow the steps that are required to complete a Lean Six Sigma project. Remember, Lean and Six Sigma, or Lean Six Sigma, they both have structure to them. You break any part of that structure, that limits your chance of success. I mentioned policy deployment. That's strategy. Okay, policy deployment is where you say, okay, I want to be in such and such a position as a company in 3 to 5 years' time. How do I get there? So most people, again, shockingly, when you go to businesses, small, medium, and even large enterprises, they don't know what strategy is. Okay, a lot of companies attempt to do the balanced scorecard, for example, but I've been in organisations where it was only partly done. It wasn't developed enough to be successful. But again, in terms of strategy, the Japanese made this their #1 goal. Okay, so in terms of strategy, they were the masters, and this is why we had the total quality management movement in the 60s and 70s that made the Japanese so successful. So how do you do strategy? Well, again, Lean Six Sigma has this, and it has the tools and the techniques to do it. It's a journey. It is a journey. You've got to start somewhere. You can do transformations and get great improvements in the first, second, third, fourth, and fifth years. But in the first and second years, we deploy the tools and techniques. In year 3 and 4, that's when the organisation starts to develop beliefs and values, because it takes that long through practice and habit. And did you know, for example, that it takes 3 weeks for habits to form? So when you do a small improvement, Yeah, you've got to monitor that improvement for daily for 3 weeks. Okay, and after 3 weeks, it becomes normal. Okay, so it is a journey. The first 1 or 2 years is tools and techniques. If we don't understand all of the tools and techniques of Lean and Six Sigma, then how long do you think it's going to take us to get to where we want to be? Lastly, but not least, you may think, okay, how to run successful programs. It's the opposite of this. Well, it is. And again, this list isn't exhaustive. But I think, we could draw quite a long list here, but these are the top 4 in my opinion. Do we have effectively trained people? Like I said here, some Lean Six Sigma green belts and black belts and even yellow belts, okay, don't understand the full suite of tools. Commit to change. We need to commit to change. How do you motivate people when you're working within a team to do something differently? Is it because the company isn't making profits, so we can't give an extra pay rise? Is it because we're in a difficult marketplace? Is it because our contracts are up for rebid and there is a danger that we might lose those contracts, therefore people's jobs are in danger? Why do we want to commit to change? Are we working in organisations where the staff and the people are working at the minimum wage? And what can we do to improve their lives? Not just economically by improving their wages, but emotionally. We've got to have an open mind, okay? There will be failures when you do Lean and Six Sigma. There will be times when it becomes too difficult to do in a specific project or element or department or whatever. But always remember this, 2 steps forward and 1 step back is still progress. You've got to have a strategic approach. Now, obviously, I've mentioned strategy on this one, but you need to deploy policy deployment. So, for example, if we know what our priorities are, let's say, for example, we want to improve throughput. That's the rate at which we produce things. Whether it's manufacturing or in hospital, the rate at which we process people and patients. How are we going to do that? What strategies are we going to deploy to improve that specific leading measure, throughput? If we focus on the wrong thing, we might not get the right results, or we might not be efficient in our approach. Yes, we can have the low-hanging fruit to start with, and it doesn't take much effort to identify the low-hanging fruit. But even so, if that's not one of our strategic imperatives, is that low-hanging fruit the right area to focus on? Okay, so what we're going to do now, we're going to go into a live demo of a Lean Six Sigma project, in summary, which will pick out some of these things and give you an idea of what improvement looks like. And I'll be addressing a couple of these issues. Hi everyone, thanks for staying with me. I just wanted to go through this demonstration on a live Lean Six Sigma project, what it can achieve, and to back up some of what I said on the main presentation in terms of how it should be cost neutral. One of the myths is that Lean Six Sigma is very expensive. However, one of the mantras of Lean and Lean Six Sigma is that it should be cost neutral. In other words, we should be creative rather than spending money. There's actually a saying called creativity over capital. So rather than spending money, we try and be creative. And this is what it's all about. So this is a manufacturing example. However, the same tools and techniques do apply in service industries. So looking at this particular slide, for example, here, it's a rubber molded part. The team, as they should and as they've been instructed, split the part down into different zones. All right, highlighted in red. Now, there are 12 different types of defect that you can get on any one of these parts. This particular part is produced on a single press machine. The company has over 40. So by transferring the knowledge and the learning from this to other parts, okay, gives us a great advantage. And this is why, rather than any other methodology, Lean Six Sigma really can transform businesses and the way businesses are run and the way we look at things and how they're managed. So yes, 12 different defects. We call them defect opportunities. Okay, short mouldings, splits, blisters, bubbles, contamination, etc., etc. So there's 12 different types of defects, or another language, 12 different failure modes. Now, like I said, this applies to service industries. Imagine an invoice, for example, and an invoice has got 8 fields. So, for example, you might have the sender's address, the tax, the actual price, payment terms, and an itemized invoice, or goods or services that have been sold, etc. Even an email address, that might be another field. So each one of those fields is an opportunity for the data inputter to get things wrong. It's an opportunity for a defect to occur. Okay, so it's the same thing, and we use exactly the same principles. For this particular part, we use little cards, just cutouts from A4 paper, really, little table. Quality auditors would go around, they'd pick a part up and they'd say, right, there's a defect, there's a short moulding there, and it's on this particular area of the part, so it's on area 10, and it's a short moulding, so we'd call it A10. And there's a reason why I've chosen that, because I've got a slide further on which indicates to you, or illustrates rather, exactly where we're going with this. So here we have a bar chart, basically. There's cavities 1 to 12. Imagine a big block of metal which is split in two. For those of you who don't know what a tool is, and it opens up, and inside there's 12 metal molds, okay, or steel molds, and each mold forms the part. Okay, we call them cavities. So in this particular tool, there are 12 cavities which would produce 12 parts. All right, we can see the cavity 5 and 8 are the main culprits, and the biggest issue with cavity 5, which we singled out, was at A10. So it's a short moulding, and in that area of the part that I showed you just now. You can see from all of this that the reject rates were 19.2%, which is huge. The cost of that is really, really high in terms of scrap, rework, raw material inventory, even finished goods inventory, communication, management. The cost is actually quite huge. But for confidentiality reasons, I won't go into that and give you the actual cost right now. Okay, so we're focusing on cavity 5, short mouldings. The next step is to do some root cause analysis. So here we have a fishbone. There are various steps prior to producing a fishbone that we need to go through. So first step is structured brainstorming, where a team of people, and it would be an odd number of people, so perhaps 9, 11, 13 people. And each idea for causing a short moulding goes on a post-it notes, and each post-it note went onto a flip chart. We separated them by relationship or affinity, which helps us to produce an affinity diagram as one of the 7 quality tools. And so once we separated them by affinity, we can produce themes now. So in this case, we've got people, material, measure, environment, process, and machinery. So we have the affinity. Once we have the relationship by affinity, we structure them onto a fishbone. So using voting methods, and there's a specific technique for doing this that I won't go into now, but perhaps I'll do it on a future presentation. But it is a critical part of it. Using voting and a structured voting methodology that we get from 50 to 60 possible reasons for failure to here, we have 5. Okay, so we have 5 possible, and the team voted. Now you may think, now putting your hands up, voting, what do you think is the biggest influence on short mouldings? Might be a bit wishy-washy, but actually it's extremely effective, and this is how world-class organizations structure their root cause analysis. Okay, and I even believe in the future artificial intelligence will be based on Fishbones, but we won't go into that now. So 5 reasons for causing short mouldings, and it was all voted. The hope is that within those 5 variables, we will get the top 2 reasons for failure. And that's exactly what happened. So going on to the next slide, here we're talking about root cause analysis. So A10 was a short moulding. It's actually a gas air trap on the top snout of the part. It's most prevalent in cavity 5, 36%, but spread across them all. Reasons to believe it's more prone to occurring on parts from top grommet plates, but there's no data to support this at that time. Well, we do have the data now because things have actually moved on. This particular slide will be updated into the final presentation. Okay, and top potential root causes to investigate was the venting, which wasn't allowing the gas or air to escape, poor tool construction, poor balance on the tool, insufficient back pressure, too high an injection speed. Now, this was all in the analyze phase. So during the review and the finalizing of the analyze phase, we obviously did the review, and it was proposed from the team that they remanufacture a tool, buy a new tool. So design and manufacture a new tool, plug it in, and hopefully all will be well. Well, that isn't always the case, and it's actually the worst thing you can do. For one thing, if you go to management and say, oh, let's spend £25,000 on a new tool, chances are you're going to get knocked back immediately. Secondly, if you were just going to do that, why would you go through this whole investigation? Okay, well, obviously the reason is, looking at the mantra creativity over capital, we don't want to spend any money. We want to be more creative and we want to reduce defect rates. But perhaps once defect rates have been reduced, and in time we have a return on investment, which in this case was actually immediate, and over time, then perhaps you could think about, well, we don't think we'll get more than a 4 or 4.5 to 5 sigma. If we want to be truly world class, get to from 5 to 6, then perhaps we might need a new tool. But at least by then, in a year's time or whatever, we'd have had the return on investment, which will allow us to pay for it, hence cost neutral. Okay, so once that was proposed, I immediately knocked that back and said, no, we're not spending any money. Let's look at innovative ways to do it. Let's look at other ways we can reduce the defect rates down. So poor balancing of the tool, insufficient back pressures, too high in injection speed. So this gave us areas to look at, but I quickly discounted this one on my instruction. So they went back and looked at it, and they started to put improvements in place. Now, you may ask, why in the analyze phase are they putting improvements in? Why don't they do it in the improve phase? Well, the reason is, once you identify areas for improvement and you think you can start reducing the problem or the defect rates or stopping the bleeding, as we call it, then you should actually put some temporary, not permanent, but temporary improvements in place. And this is what they did. So they optimized the process settings, feedstock temperatures, top and bottom platens temperatures were set to optimize the heat distribution within the tool. The tool was marked up to ensure consistent orientation when mounting the tool to the press. Now, isn't that a thing? Because when you think about it, a tool can actually be put into the machine the wrong way around, or the top of it can be orientated in such a way that it will create defects. So simply by etching the top and the bottom of the tool and creating a match mark, we call them match marks,
This would ensure that the tool setters put the tool in the correct orientation. Simple thing to do, but yet these mistakes were happening. That form of error proofing, by the way, is called poka-yoke in Japanese, or error proofing. Insulation material added to parts of tool to assist with reducing heat loss. Further work required. It's actually been done now. That has actually been implemented. New ejector plate fabricated and properly lined to remove splits under the skirt, and the tool was balanced to 95% fill. So given that this is at the end of the analyze phase and some improvements were put in, actually quite quickly, within a week, in actual fact, we can then start to analyze and consistently measure the defect rates from then on to see if there is a gap between what was originally happening and what's happening now. This slide shows that after a few weeks, the reject rate, and after the implementation of those improvements, the reject rate had gone down to 12.9%, but the problem was still in cavity 5, which still gives us an area to focus on. But look at the difference already from 19.2% to 12.9% with a very little cost, perhaps £100, £150 and a few man hours, not too much. We've got that right now. And the hope is, well, I can definitely say that in the improve phase, once these improvements become permanent and further measurement is undertaken, and certainly when the control phase is completed, that reject rate will be right down to around 2%, if not 1%, as has happened before within this particular company. Okay, so lastly but not least, a temporary action plan. So action plans should be set out in a certain way. Again, we won't go into that in too much detail, but to maintain that 12.9% defect rate or reduce it even further, we needed to put some actions in place. This, and no doubt some of the elements within this action plan, will go on the final implementation plan, which is produced in the control phase for future improvements. So this is by no means final. So I hope you got something from that. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed it, click subscribe. If you want to talk about it further, just put some notes on the bottom. Or remember to like us on Facebook, etc., etc. And back to the main presentation. Hope you enjoyed it. Bye-bye for now.
Okay, I hope you enjoyed that demo. In summary, what we've spoken about today is the myths behind Lean and Six Sigma, the mindset behind Lean, and why Lean Six Sigma fails most of the time, and what we can do to counter that, and how to run successful Lean Six Sigma programs in the future. Thank you for watching the video. Hope you got a ton of value from it. Click on the link below, that'll take you to more content. If you liked this, please subscribe. If you've got any suggestions for future videos, please comment below, and I'll see you on the dark side.